In this quick video discussion, we're going to talk about, or continue to talk about, a Western way of awakening as opposed to the Eastern ways. In the last video discussion, we left off with that nature itself precedes our birth and continues subsequent to our death. And this was a belief we wanted to take hold of until we actually could empirically ourselves prove this to be correct or incorrect. And what that belief does is it does a natural linking of these realities from before our birth and then through life and then after death, that nature was there before us, it continues after us, and the whole process that we go through is a natural process. And it's that natural process that we're just trying to understand in a natural, reasonable, logical way. And it's not that we won't appreciate and use Eastern techniques and understandings. It's that we want to also employ the greatest strengths of the Western intellect, which is natural to our culture, to help us understand our entire existence. And of course, the difficulty of a lot of this, whether it's from the Eastern perspective or Western perspective, is all the states that we go through. Now, before you were born, you were just in an energetic state. And from that energetic state, then you came into an embryonic state in a three-dimensional reality. So from that embryonic state, then you came into a human state. And from that human state, then you go into states of waking and dreaming. Then you have conscious and unconscious states that go along with it. And all these states, it's very difficult to transmit information or understanding and knowledge from one state to another. Just like when you wake up from a dream, it's very hard. Almost instantaneously, you go into your waking state and the other state dissipates. So that once you become a functioning human being, then you are already partially enlightened, partially awakened. And what we want to do then is continue on, whether it's through the Eastern and Western techniques, is to go from the mammalian state, the mammal state that we are, into a more spiritual state. And there, instead of being so socially connected, we're more spiritually connected. Well, in the Eastern ways, they try to do this by fully disengaging the mind. They try to go through meditation, because in the East it's not the way of being methodical and reasonable and logical and trying to work these things out. They are go through the meditative process to disengage the mind and then open themselves up to a greater knowledge. In the Western way, we can do the same thing, but we can do it, instead of by fully disengaging the mind, we can do it by fully engaging the mind. And I'm not talking about using the 10% of your brain and that concept and everything, but I'm talking about fully engaging your mind and bringing to the power to bear all your processes of understanding. For instance, in the Western sense, instead of meditation, we can use concentration. Now, when you concentrate on something long enough, and deeply enough, that concentration then can actually naturally evolve into a type of meditation. But it's the Western way of getting there through concentration um, to focus in on a particular understanding. So when we use our reason and our logic and we concentrate on then the discovery part of what is our purpose, well, the reason that enlightenment and awakening doesn't work in the Western technique is because the end is unknown. So the end would be like, why did we go through a three-dimensional life? Why did we go through this plane of existence? When that end and the beginning part are both known, then the awakening process starts so that we understand how to connect these two and exactly what we're doing in the middle before death and after birth, what we're doing in the middle to most appropriately connect these two ends. And then we can do that in a reasonable, logical process, although we're going to use different Western techniques, like I say, such as concentration and other techniques to do this. But without knowing the beginning or the end, then of course the Eastern techniques seem to apply more because it seems to be an entirely mystical experience. You know, that life is a mystery. But once you know why something is happening, then it becomes entirely more reasonable. Then the mind can handle it. Your logic and reason are appropriate tools to understand it. And that's what we talk about basically in the first agreement. So in our last discussion, when we said nature preceded this, well, that nature that we were in when we were in an energetic state prior to our birth or our inception, really, it was in this state that we were asked and actually we agreed. It was our very first agreement of this experience. We agreed to come through a three-dimensional experience for the purpose of gaining awareness, exactly what you are doing now. So then upon accumulating and gaining that awareness, which is ultimately to reveal the connection of the spirit, because it truly is the spiritual plane that connects from before birth to after death. It is taking this awareness then past the portal of death, and that then is the crucial culmination of our existence. So the attraction from the Eastern standpoint is that because of our consciousness, we tend to not be aware of the beginning or the end, and so life then becomes a mystery. Well, it's the mystical processes of the East through meditation and other techniques that the mystery becomes resolved to them, and it's an all or nothing process. You're either awakened or you're not, you're enlightened or you're not. But in the Western sense, understanding where we came from, why we came from, where we're going, then we're not so much trying to resolve a mystery. It's not the mystery that we're trying to gain, but we're trying to gain a greater and greater understanding. And as we gain this understanding or awarenesses, then we can do it in a very methodical, Western, structured process type of a way, which is more towards our cultural aptitude. And so what happens is that when you are first incepted, or when you're first born, actually at your birth, then the seed of awareness was implanted, so to speak, in your mind, and that accounts for even your curiosity now, your intuitive understanding that you are spiritual. This awareness is going to grow, but in general, what happens that you are born into that social state, and you become socialized to the three-dimensional world and your sensory world, and so that becomes your cognitive reality. That becomes reality to you, but slowly, either through a Western way or perhaps an Eastern way, as you gain more and more awareness of the spirit, then your belief systems that prior to this revolved around your social concepts and everything begin to shift over towards the spiritual understanding, because you're gaining more and more awareness and more beliefs of the spiritual world. For example, you go about your everyday, ordinary existence, and yet the ordinary events that happen to you in your life, because you are spiritual and you are spiritually connected, those same exact events are what is used in the spiritual world as well. So if you call the social side ordinary and the spiritual side extraordinary, then these daily events that occur in your life are both ordinary from the social side and extraordinary because they're imbued with the spiritual part of your constitution as well. And this is where many spiritual things happen and tend to actually cause you to consider that the spiritual world is in fact a reality, and is in fact a daily event, and is in fact part of your daily existence. For instance, it is from the ordinary events of our daily occurrences from which signs and omens come. It is from these ordinary parts of the environment, the social construct of which you see people doing extraordinary spiritual things or explaining spiritual ways or trying to convey greater awarenesses, whether from the Eastern perspective or the Western perspective. And then again, slowly, as you become more concentrated, more investigative, more attuned to looking into the spiritual awarenesses, and they accumulate, then the preponderance of that accumulation is going to be eventually a greater balance than the academic and social constructs and the cognitive system that you have of reality from the social side, then will start to and eventually be taken over because you will have more and more awarenesses of the spiritual side, and then your cognitive system will be looking at your daily occurrences from the spiritual aspect rather than from the social aspect. So what you'll notice is a shift from the way that you look at the world, and this can happen. It doesn't have to happen in a revelatory, all at once, mystical experience. It can happen through a very concentrated, very methodical, very committed, very practiced application of simply using our logic and our reason and our thinking to bring us to natural conclusions and further awarenesses. So in our next video discussion, we're going to talk about how to take responsibility for accomplishing these awarenesses as they come incrementally. So until then, light, peace, and understanding.